It's one of the most outrageous survival stories that I have ever heard of. He says he was drugged and he woke up in a shallow grave, partially buried with no idea where he was. And that is where this survival story begins. This episode of Becoming Brave is brought to you by Summit Adventure Fuel. Unlock your next adventure and get there. What's going on, guys? This is Mark Vins coming back to you with another edition of the Becoming Brave podcast, joined again by Asa and Andrew, my team that travels with me all over the world to make the amazing adventures that we share with you on the Brave Wilderness channel, also on the Mark Vins channel, where you are watching this. So today we're introducing a new style of segment, brand new stuff, where we take a look inside a survival story and we give our insight and reflection. And this one is particularly wild. Actually, it's one of the most outrageous survival stories that I have ever heard of. And it took place in an environment that we have actually been to, or I have actually been to personally, making Brave Wilderness content. But before we get into the outrageous survival story that is the Ricky Megee story, we are going to talk about some of the latest and greatest on Brave Wilderness. What do you guys think about the latest videos? The Wonderpus.
Wonderpus. That's one of my cuts. It's a unique one. Some say the world's smartest octopus.
Yeah, I would say so. It was easily the most incredible octopus encounter that I've ever had. And I know we've filmed octopus encounters, like the Taipa one in Australia. But this one was really special because I actually had this like magical interaction underwater at the end of the video.
Yeah, what's it like when you're underwater like that and an animal actually starts to like observe and interact with you?
That's sort of like the demarcation point between the wildlife or animal kingdom, if you will, is there are some creatures that display character traits that we can recognize almost as human, and then there are some that don't at all. So to give a contrasting example of this, like you have an alligator. Now, I know some people who love alligators are going to say, oh, they have character traits. And yeah, there are from gator to gator. There are different traits. But mainly with reptiles, to me, especially with their eyes and their mannerisms, there's not a lot of like relatability going on there.
Yeah, it would take a very discerning eye to pick up on the emotions of a reptile.
Yeah, and just like anything, if you look deep enough, you'll find it. You'll find it. It's there. They're very much alive, and they do have different personalities. But to an uneducated eye, you're not going to be able to relate to an alligator very well. Whereas an octopus, for example, has mannerisms, and it uses its arms in hand-like ways, or it has these mimics, and the way it gets curious and observes you. They're just little things. And, and beyond those two, like I've seen this happen with like a bullet ant. A bullet ant has very human-like engagement with its mannerisms. So it does vary from species to species, animals to animals. You can't just say like, well, it's mammals and everything else. It's like, I see it in insects. I see it in mammals. I see it in birds. And then of course, with cephalopods, they're incredibly intelligent. And I agree. I think the Wonderpus is the smartest octopus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you in the camp of saying that octopus might be aliens? I feel like I see that.
That's a loaded question.
That shows up on the internet a lot.
So let's talk about the reason for why that has begun. It's mainly because there's really no fossil records of, the evolution of the octopus. We can't see like really like where they came from. That's because they're goo.
Yeah.
There's not a lot.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah,
there's not a lot to
fossilize.
Yeah, they have the beak, of course, and I think there are like fossilized beaks that they have found. They found some pretty big ones, but knowing a little bit about fossil records and the surface level knowledge we have of just like dinosaurs, which have bones, of course, when it comes to a soft body creature like a cephalopod or a squid or an octopus, you're just going to have a lot less data on those. So that's why this rumor has started. But it's also because they're so distinctly intelligent as compared to other life forms that live in those environments in their size bracket. You don't see like a lot of other creatures that are, about the size of a basketball that can take on like 15 different variants of like mimicry, right? Like
I don't think a crab is doing that.
No, which crabs can be smart too. They have like decorator crabs that can camouflage themselves, and they have pretty unique character traits where they can, use their claws to crush things, and they can use it to make things. So I don't want to say like crabs are dumb by comparison, but they just can't do nearly as much.
Right.
Sorry to my crustacean fans.
Yeah, come on, man. Anyway, yeah, the Wonderpus video's out, recent upload. This is a video too that I consider core to the audience. Like this was made for the real fans of Brave Wilderness and the Mark Vins channel.
For sure. It definitely satisfies the classic, like, let us find a really weird creature for you and educate you on it.
Yeah. And, over the years, we've kind of drifted back and forth on this topic, but as YouTube, the platform has evolved and is now so competitive, some of our content we make strategically for the algorithm. We know, like, if we do certain things with the titling, the thumbnail, even the intro of the video, that it will reach a wider audience. However, a lot of that boils down to the topic. So just the general topic of the video has to align with the general upload. Whereas, the Wonderpus video, I just think is one of the coolest creatures. And it was this phenomenal encounter I had with this tiny octopus in Indonesia. Indonesia.
Yeah.
We've been to East Asia a lot recently.
Yeah.
And, I'm proud that we're still putting out that content. We didn't make that video because we thought it was going to do like a bazillion views, but the people that watch it, like the comments on this video are just fantastic. And I could tell we're reaching the main fans.
Mm-hmm. Look at that. Someone even gave $2.
Right. We appreciate that. Thank you guys.
Damien Scott, $23.91.
Thanks, Damien. The Wonderpus is such a funny name. And it has a great name.
Does have a great name.
The Wonderful Wonderpus, of course. What else have we had come out lately?
It is really beautiful. I will say that. Like, one of the most beautiful octopus I've ever seen.
Totally. Yeah. Octopus are still, to me, like an anomaly in the animal world. And, to your question about, like, do I think they're aliens? I mean, where does life come from? I think there's a lot of interpretation of, like, where the code of life started. That's one of my biggest, I think, challenges with just the pure theory of evolution. Like, I definitely believe in, like, adaptation and general evolution. I mean, we can see that in fossil records, and we have snippets of it, but we don't have the whole picture. And that could be just because we don't have the fossils yet. Sorry, I'm gonna drink. Everyone, when you have the creationist side, everyone's like, "Oh, fossil evidence, it's fragmented." It's like, well, yeah, it's the collection of the fossils. Just the very process of getting that data is fragmented. Mm-hmm. All the dinosaurs that you see in museums are like multiple dinosaurs kind of glommed together. So yeah, there's a lot of gaps, a lot of holes in it. But with an octopus, where does that come from? Where does that genetic code come from? Where did it start? I think it's highly debatable. And if you want to say it came from another world, that would mean it's an alien. And I would say that I might be leaning toward that. Yeah, I might be leaning toward that. The complexity of life is just so fantastic. Yep. It's hard to imagine it just sparking from nothing. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. It might be my human brain not able to process it, but for me, it's tough. It's tough.
The ocean is pretty alien in itself. Just like what goes on down there.
Yeah.
How do creatures adapt, and then also just what do we still not know? And I feel like it's so much. We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, circumstantially, I mean, it is an alien world.
Yeah.
We could not exist there. Like, we could only visit.
Mm-hmm.
You can only be in the ocean for periods of time.
It's a nice way to think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe scary to some too.
Yeah. I mean, you just scuba diving, and this isn't for anyone who's like scared for scuba diving. This isn't going to help, but it's a life support system. It's like you're kind of going down there on a respiratory emergency kit to try to survive for like an hour, because without it, you couldn't be there. So
it's like voluntary intubation.
Yeah. So, take it for what it is. It is an alien world. And in that respect, octopus are very much aliens to us, to our world. But, did they come from another place? I think that's debatable.
See, I've heard we share up to like 60-something% of our DNA with bananas.
I was literally gonna. I
Really?
thought you were gonna quote
Yeah.
something.
I've not
else. I was
heard
gonna,
that.
like,
Because
yeah,
I
I've
think
heard the
so
same thing
much
about
of
bananas.
the so I'm in more of the no camp given that. I think a lot of the I am not a scientist whatsoever, very limited knowledge base, but I think a lot of the structure of what our DNA says must just be like how to make the cell at like a very fundamental level, you know?
Yeah. But it's so complicated. Like those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know, like you think about the way computers work, right? You know, with that code at its most primary level is just like this or that.
Binary.
But it's made up of, and I guess it's more than binary with like the new quantum chips and stuff. Like it's expanded beyond that, but it's still it's a fork in the road, and it can either go this way, or this way. And that's sort of how to my understanding, the genetic code works. You have a set of outcomes, and the code will just dictate the outcome. So when you get down to a very, very basic level, it is basic, but it's just like wrapping your head around that complexity of just the stacks of information that are like so small you couldn't see it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like what is it? Like you could fit like an insane amount of data into like an insanely like if you were to measure it on a computer, it's like petabytes worth of data into like an incredible like the pinhead of a needle or something like that.
Whoa. Wait, if you just think about hardware, you know, like everybody, you know, and this is this might be for another podcast entirely, but on the surface, you look at human beings and the things that we consider like not natural that we make. But I'm like, aren't we like also natural? And aren't we making all these things from the planet? It's not like we're going out there and getting things. We're putting together using our brains. So isn't like a car natural at the end of the day?
I don't think those things would ever cross paths in the natural
in
a world
like
without.
If you consider us unnatural,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
I don't see. Humans are natural. I wouldn't call a car natural. Like if it has to be like,
but it was made by
manufactured though.
But it was made by what's up there, right? It's just like a computer. It's just compounded many levels throughout design and iterations.
No, I get what you're saying.
So the ultimate end result looks unnatural, but where it came from is very natural.
Fair enough.
Big topic, probably for another
Fair
podcast.
Enough. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So we got the Wonderpus video out now. If you want to check it out, links in the description. What else are we working on? What's some like, you know, inside scoop we can give the listeners? What's happening? What are you guys editing right now?
You have an exciting one coming up.
Ooh, yes.
I guess I do too.
Clue him in. Let's hear it.
Ticks.
Spill the tea.
Oh yeah.
Spill the tea.
Yeah.
We got a new series.
I didn't realize we were unveiling ticks.
Oh, so are we not? I mean, I could tell them
we-
about Black Forest Scorpion. That one's gonna be cool.
No. Let's not bury the lead. What are we gonna do, Andrew? What do we have coming?
We're gonna be informing the audience about the 5 most dangerous ticks that they need to worry about. It's going to be timely. It's going to be out at the end of May on the Brave Wilderness channel, and it's going to be exciting. It is tick season, so definitely want to watch out when you're walking around.
And it has a lot of new production methodology.
Yes, it does. It's going to be really cool to give you guys a more controlled look at some of these animals and what they can do.
Yeah.
And especially there's some very interesting ones on this list. We're going to be looking at 5 ticks, and some of them are real scary. And
ticks are nasty.
Yeah, they are.
They can really mess you up.
A lot of horror stories around ticks.
I just saw a story this morning about someone in Natick who just died from getting bit by
Lyme
deer
disease?
Yeah, by a deer tick. Well, they got they had complications from, because when you initially get Lyme disease, it's like a flu-like symptom.
Yeah.
And they had complications to that. So it wasn't like long stage or late stage Lyme disease. It was like early stage.
You.
So anyway, more to come on ticks. And you have something coming?
Black Forest Scorpion. It's a classic sting video.
Scorpion's like this big, guys. It's like
world's largest scorpion, I believe.
It's a land lobster.
Yeah. It's a land lobster.
Super intimidating.
Yeah.
If anyone knows the MF Doom like mask, then its face literally looks like that. Like it's like
very
a comic
robotic.
book character.
Yeah.
Oof, that was a bad one. That actually ended up way worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because
had some good aftermath, right? Like unexpected.
Typically, large scorpions don't really do a whole lot, but of course, we were in a totally different place in the world.
It could pinch too.
Yeah.
It had a good combo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it got you pretty good on the catch, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It gets me.
Yeah.
It gets me.
We might have to do some blurring.
Yeah. So for those, and when does this come out?
Mid-July.
Mid-July.
Or June. Sorry.
June. So
Mid-June.
next month. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got some really good juicy content coming up on the Brave Wilderness channel and here on the Mark Vins channel. If you haven't yet, please subscribe so you don't miss those. You'll hopefully continue to get the podcast sent to you, but we appreciate you taking a look at all that content and telling us what you think. And with that, it's time to get into the brand new segment on the Becoming Brave podcast, where we're going to take a deeper look into the incredible survival story of Ricky Megee. So today we're going to be talking about one of the most unusual survival stories to come out of the Australian Outback, the case of Ricky Megee. And I have been to the Australian Outback a few times. Have you guys? You guys have not been?
Not to the true Outback.
Not really.
Yeah.
I've been to Western Australia, got to see some like the red sand, but nothing.
Yeah, we touched the edge, I would say, but weren't truly out in the
middle.
So when we made the series Brave the Wild Coyote series with Animal Planet, I spent a considerable amount of time in the Outback and actually some of the places where this story takes place.
What were you looking for?
Oh gosh, out there we were looking for big goannas. We found our first thorny devil.
Ooh, cool.
Out
That's
there,
exciting.
so that was very cool. Yeah, and it's most of Australia. So like it's hard to say like, oh, we just went to the one Outback. It's it's the entire continent basically, except for the coasts. We'll get more into like some of the other happenings that I experienced out there in this story. But for anyone who ever visits Australia, it's likely not the first place you're going to go.
There's not a lot of people there, from my understanding.
No.
Like if you were to look at a population map of Australia, it's basically just the coast that have people,
And that's because it is
pretty
so
barren.
It's so inhospitable,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a lunar environment. It's just the same for miles and miles and miles and miles. So it's a really wild place to visit. I would say if it's your second trip to Australia, go check out the Outback because it is otherworldly, and just don't expect to run into too many people while you're doing it. All right, so here we go. Back in this story takes place in 2006 when Ricky Megee was the ripe age of 35 years old, and he is an Australian. He was traveling across the Northern Territory, which is obviously the northern part of Australia. And he was driving from Alice Springs to the west coast of Australia. So Alice Springs is definitely in the Outback, and I've been to Alice Springs, and it is sort of the gateway to the, I would say, like inner corridor of Australia. It's like the biggest major city in the middle of the continent. And he was across some of the most remote land in the country at this point when he's leaving Alice Springs. And this is serious Outback, guys. This is like hardcore, like you're not just a tourist at that point, like you're on your own. So there's long stretches of dirt roads with no towns for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, barely any traffic and extreme heat. There's those signs that say like, this is the last gas stop.
Yeah, you better make sure you have a full tank going out there.
And it'll give you a range. It's like, you need to make it like 500 kilometers. Otherwise you're walking.
Jeez.
And you're going to wait a while for someone to find you. That's the other thing. There's like these roads that you can just drive for days and days, and I mean that days and days. There were like we were in the Northern Territory in Darwin, which is like the gateway to a lot of the Barrier Reef and the ocean. And then we went to Catherine, which is a town just south of there, and then we drove to Alice Springs. The drive from Catherine to Alice Springs took, I want to say, 2.5 days.
Whoa.
All day driving. You're just sitting in a car, dead straight road. Everything looks the same. You get cabin fever because nothing changes.
Good gosh.
For hours and hours and hours. So just
weird.
It's a bit of a Twilight Zone sort of experience. So kind of put yourself in that headspace. If you're Ricky going across this really remote area, it is disorienting. It is unusual, and it plays tricks on your mind for sure. So, he's going through this, barely in traffic, extreme heat. It reaches its hottest temperatures on the continent in this area of Australia, which for us American is north of 120 degrees Fahrenheit, like broiling.
Death Valley.
That's nuts.
Broiling.
Yeah.
So, according to Ricky, at some point during his journey, he picked up a few hitchhikers.
Risky play right out the gate.
Bad move number one. But I will say he might have feared for these people's well-being.
No, that's true.
I also wonder, in Australia, is that more common? Like, and I feel like in a way it is. People are so friendly there.
I mean,
Hitchhiking has definitely become taboo in the States, in a way.
Yeah, and this area of Australia is sort of well known for some of the people evading law enforcement and people trying to not be found hang out in the Outback. So I would say unless the person is like really trustworthy or with a group of people, like I would pass on the hitchhiking in Australia. We were warned about this too by our fixers, the local Australians we were with. They were very concerned about like head count, and like we would stop at the gas stations and they would like do a head count, make sure no one gets left, make sure everyone's there. Like they were certainly on edge.
Wow.
About where people were and everyone being accounted for in the Outback.
It's pretty crazy that like in a first world country you could like having to have that level of wherewithal and wits about you is definitely unique.
Yeah.
It's tough to disappear, but it sounds like it's a place you could do it,
I think in the U.S., like the real West, when you're deep in like either the bluffs of Colorado or like down in Texas in certain areas, and I know it's different than the Outback, but the vibe does change when you get into those little remote towns where people aren't really coming and going as often.
Yeah.
It's more intense. People are wondering like who you are, and there's just an amount of caution.
Whenever you're like beyond the reach of the police and law and just other individuals who could like, keep that like societal pact intact. Mm-hmm. That rhymed. But that's when it feels edgy. And it definitely feels edgy out there. So back to Ricky. He picked up a few hitchhikers. And what happens next is still very unclear. This is like the mysterious part of the story, which we don't have a lot. Even he doesn't have the information on because he says he was drugged and he woke up in a shallow grave, partially buried with no idea where he was. And that is where this survival story begins. Like, holy crap. I can't even begin to process what he imagined waking up in that situation. Which, by the way, being buried alive is definitely my number one biggest fear.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I'd much rather drown. I'd much rather die in a fire. Everything attacked by a bear. Mm-hmm. All of that is well below buried alive. Buried alive because you're like
such a long, drawn out way to go, man.
Yeah.
It's scary.
And luckily, he wasn't totally buried because I don't think there would be much to tell about the story if that was the case. He was partially buried, which is kind of curious. Like, why would someone only partially bury them? Maybe they thought he was dead.
Yep.
You think?
It's just strange. It's a really weird series of events to be like, I was drugged. Then they like kind of.
Sounds like the Hangover from hell, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not to make light of it, but my God, imagine not knowing what happened, waking up, and you are in a shallow grave in one of the most remote places on the earth,
and it's super hot.
And I think that's why this is the part of the story people always question.
Yeah, like how did you get lost,
Ricky?
So okay, let's go into some of the details. I'm gonna cover up to where he gets into how he survived. Mm-hmm. He had no food, no water, no supplies, just the clothes on his back. He wandered for days trying to figure out where he was, hoping to find help. The terrain was brutal. It was open desert, no shade, blistering heat every single day with cold nights. Like in the desert, it can be scorching, fever pitch heat. And at night, it can get down to like almost freezing cold. So I've experienced that in the desert.
Did I read this correctly? Did he not have shoes? Was that part of the story?
I don't remember. That could be out there.
I didn't had shoes or something.
That's nuts.
That would kind of make sense if he was buried.
If they also.
Yeah,
I'm assuming he was
semi-robbed. It's not in my notes.
Yeah, he doesn't have his car, obviously. So
the temperatures were pushing over 105 degrees. So it's not the hottest it could be, but 105 is pretty darn hot. Mm-hmm. And that's the situation he's in. We're going to stop right there and like talk about just like what it must be like to be, coming off of being drugged. So I'm sure he was very disoriented. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't know where he is. Again, this place is like being on the moon. Let me pull up a quick picture. So these are the red dunes of Alice Springs. And it's only like this for a little while. Then it turns into more like this, where your horizon line is only marked by these like small little hills.
So it's pretty flat overall.
Yeah. And I would say like
goes
this
and
is
goes.
actually a good amount of contour. It gets even worse than this. Because Alice Springs is like a major watering hole city. There's a spring there. It's called Alice Springs. This is where there's these termite mounds. Because all that's out there in the desert are like cattle, termite mounds, and flies. Like that is the one thing I want to say. Like the flies in Australia are unbelievable. Like they actually have a hat. I'll show you in a second to deal with the fly problem.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's
Whoa,
pretty
those
wild.
Are crazy looking.
Look at that thing just sticking out of the ground.
and these are a little bit more lush than we were even seeing.
I feel like,
Yeah, here we go.
yeah, something like that is what I was picturing.
Whoops. All right, so it looks like this, and you can see that it's super flat. Like you have maybe some scrubby trees. It's deserty. It's hot. There's not a lot going on out there.
So that's not really enough to provide you any real shade.
No.
Either you're getting like maybe specklings here and there,
You
but
probably, depending on the time of day, you're getting shade from the termite mounds.
Mhm.
And a lot of animals use those termite mounds as, cover. So a lot of the lizards, like and other mammals during the day, will use an old termite mound and burrow inside of it because it's like the only structure in a lot of these places. So he is just not able to know where he's at,
Yep.
and this is where I would maybe have done some things differently. I'm not really sure. There's some gaps in the story that we weren't able to figure out. One of them is like, were there not tire tracks or footprints leading to where you were buried? That's the first thing I would do. I would follow how I must have gotten there.
track back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good first course of action.
Because you don't know if you're once you're out of sight of a building or a road, you don't know if you're a mile away, 10 miles away, 50 miles away, but you know that something got you there. So that would be my first line of discovery. Like, how could I possibly have gotten here? And I would backtrack that to the end.
And I don't know this if he woke up at night or during the day. And I think that would be telling. Let me ask you this. If you woke up at night and you're in that situation, you're in a shallow grave, you're still breathing, would you stay put until you have some light to like try and figure out your surroundings, or would you start moving?
At night, it depends. If there's moonlight, you might be able to see. When you're in the desert, your night vision kicks in, and if there's enough moonlight, it's almost like being in daylight. Yeah, you can see really well. But if there's no moonlight and it's pitch black, I'd probably just stay put until I had something to see. How about you, Andrew?
I don't know. I think it's tough to make the decision of what we would do. Like, because there's probably just an overwhelming amount of panic going on. You know what I mean?
So
that's very strategic thinking. I'm not sure we would have that kind of clarity in that situation.
So he ends up walking whatever direction. There's gaps in the story. This is one of them. We don't really know where he walked to next. We just know he started to walk and started to move. And he managed to find some old cattle trots and a small water tank, which gave him just enough water to stay alive. He set up a makeshift shelter using bits of tarp and wood and whatever scraps he could find. And that's where he stayed waiting, hoping someone would find him. So he probably scoured and found these materials and was like, I have enough water. And if I just wait it out long enough, I'll see somebody. I'll see a plane. I'll see a car. Someone will be passing by. So he must have had a good reason to believe that there's a potential for this.
It's like almost if they're a big Australian industry is cattle. So it's like if you're seeing some sort of infrastructure that's supporting cattle, you're like, okay, someone must come check this eventually. So I feel like posting up by that it's a reasonable strategy.
Yeah, because without any supplies and without knowing how far, you're not going to survive trekking across that desert.
And I don't think he found it like immediately. Like I think there was a bit of time of like, this was probably the first water he found.
Yeah.
Someone in a vehicle put that there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, there's cattle trough. Like, so there's likely going to be a farmer at some point who's going to come and check a fence or check something about the cattle, but you just don't know how long. It could be weeks, months. Maybe that farmer's not even using that part of the land right now.
And in his case, it was not soon.
It was not soon at all, because he actually spent 71 days in the Outback, and he survived eating whatever he could. He was eating frogs. He claims he was eating his fair share of ants. That'd be what the termites were eating. Leeches. That's a weird one. Beetles, and even flies. So back to flies. Let me show you guys. So you see these hats, and they have corks. They use wine bottle corks, and they swing. They swing around your head, because there are so many flies. Like, this is real. That's a real image. There are so many flies that cover you. Look
Holy
at that.
cow.
Ugh.
And I have videos of me and Coyote and the team. If you hold still long enough, they will cover every surface of your skin.
God.
You'll be like, if you stand still for more than 60 seconds, you will literally be covered in thousands of flies that are just ravenously trying to find moisture to slurp up. So they get after your eyeballs, the corners of your mouth, your ears. It is super uncomfortable. So they develop these hats with corks, and the corks swing as you walk, and that helps keep the flies off your face. So
Sounds awful.
It just goes to show you how important moisture is in that environment, to the point where if you go there hydrated, they're just going to be...
I'm not exaggerating. He probably just had to open his mouth like this and let the flies climb in his mouth, close his mouth, and have a meal.
Oh my God.
I guarantee that's how he was doing
Well,
it.
apparently, I mean, like, to, I think, burn less energy, and also just like he would lay on the ground during the day and just wait to get, like, have ants and stuff just crawling over him.
And
just
he
would just eat him.
Yeah. Well, so, he was basically
Bill Gates
eating.
will be proud.
Yeah. He would eat anything he could find. And he would also drink rainwater when he could collect it. So it was, you do get monsoon rain. So I'm guessing this is probably like end of summer when the rain season was coming back. He would even drink his own urine when things got really desperate, which they say if you're, lost at sea, it's much better to drink your own urine and recycle than to drink salt water. And when you're in the desert, obviously salt water isn't even an option. And, there are ways to kind of create a water reserve, but when you're out there for that long, 71 days, I mean, even the methods that I know probably wouldn't get you that far. So, yeah.
Definitely had to get scrappy.
Yes. So he got lucky that it was during rainy season. The ways that I would think of to, sort of recycle water and to, kind of create a condensation trap. You guys know what that is? So if you find a piece of plastic or a piece of tarp, you get maybe dirty water or even urine collected in that reservoir, and then you cover a tarp. You cover a tarp so that heat, that conduction of heat, will condensate the water out of the dirty water, out of the urine, and then you put a little cup in the middle and a pebble or a rock that holds the tarp downward into a point, and then all that condensation will come down and drip clean water. So at the end of the day, you'll be left with whatever filtered water that you can get, but we're talking about an ounce. We're not talking about like
a pint of water.
Yeah. You might be able to survive, I would think, maybe a week using a method like that, but not 71 days. So in this 71 days, guys, in that time, Ricky lost over 130 pounds.
Wow.
So he must have been a big boy to start. I mean, I've seen a picture of Ricky. He's like a big dude.
Yeah, he's a big dude. Yeah. I mean, the pictures of him after, though, he is a skeleton.
Good gosh.
His body was literally breaking down. His skin was peeling from some sun exposure. He was delirious. That tracks. But he kept himself alive by rationing the water, staying in the shade, and not wasting energy during the day. So his decision to stay put is ultimately what saved his life, because eventually some cattle station workers found him. So his idea ended up working out, albeit probably much longer than he expected it to take place. And at first he didn't even believe that they were real, and he thought he was seeing ghosts. So he was totally like off the reservation.
I mean, if you're out there for over 2 months, just day after day like that, it's going to take an extreme mental toll. I don't know if I would believe anything I was seeing at that point. So
when they helped him, they of course rescued him, took him to medical treatment, and slowly he recovered. You're not going to just, get patched up in a day. from an experience like that. So I'm sure it took him many weeks, if not months, to bounce back.
I mean, you're probably, geez, at the end of losing 130 pounds, you're probably not even that mobile at that point, you know?
Yeah.
And even, the doctors were stunned that he survived. Everyone was. Even wildlife experts, survival specialists are all skeptical. And a lot of people questioned if this story was even true or not. And that's what we're going to start talking about, especially because of the part about being drugged and buried. There's no definitive proof either way, but there's also no question that he was found in this severe condition and had clearly been out there surviving on next to nothing for a very, very long time in one of the most inhospitable places on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you're not
Yeah.
you're not getting yourself into that condition out there.
Mm-hmm. So
any other way.
So with that level of detail and hearing the story, what do you guys think? Do you think it's legit? Do you think it was out there?
I think he was out there for at least, I mean, if not 71 days, probably like 50, like at least. I mean, you're not losing that amount of weight and looking like that without.
To be fair, how can you track how many days? I mean, he's just going off the last date in his memory, but he was so delirious.
Right.
You can't even really try. Like he could not testify for himself, right? Like on a witness stand because of the condition of his state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that you have to question it all. And when I heard about that, when you presented the story, Asa, you found the story for the segment, I was like, man, I don't know. 71 days over 2 months.
In the Outback like that.
And having been there, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I question if it was that long. What do you think, Andrew?
Well, it would be, I guess, calculated on the last day of his recollection and then the date that they found him. I feel like the date that they found him is fixed. Like it's probably on medical records somewhere of him receiving treatment. And what would be fungible is the date that he last remembers, I suppose. Not saying he did that, but that seems like the variable in that equation.
I want to get a look at Ricky here. Let's take a look at Ricky. Wow. That's him after. Look at that. He is a skeleton. Whoa. And how did he start? This is him before. Oh my gosh, that's a great before and after. Wow.
I mean, he looks like a pretty normal dude, like.
Yeah, I don't look at him and like he's a problem. He doesn't look like he was out there, doing nefarious things just by the looks of him. Seems like a really nice, normal guy, just if I'm judging by the picture here. But man, the fact that this is a true story is wild to me. And again, after being out in the Outback myself for many weeks, filming with supplies, and it was rough on us. Like I lost a lot of weight just being there, and I was, being provided with food and everything, but we were hiking all day long every day, and it's brutal. I feel like his decision to stay put is ultimately what saved his life.
Oh, I feel like if you were on the move, you could zap yourself in like 2 or 3 days and just be gone.
Do you guys think you could eat bugs if your life depended on it?
Yes. Yeah. I could eat bugs.
Ace loves bugs.
I love bugs.
Yeah?
Yeah. Murder hornets. Love those.
Oh, God. Andrew, how about you? Could you survive on bugs alone?
I think I could get a few down if the situation called for it. I'm not a picky eater.
I couldn't do it. Like, I would never eat a centipede. The centipede on a stick thing grosses me out every time I've seen that.
Ooh.
Centipede would be gross.
Yeah. I think they taste really bad.
I have to be really hungry.
Yeah.
Bugs to me sound more manageable than like something that would be like squishy. Like I don't know if I could eat frogs or lizards raw.
Raw is tough.
Yeah, they're just the idea of the texture would just not.
Like imagine
work.
eating an ant. Like how much flavor could be there? Imagine it'd be bitter.
Ants don't faze me at all.
Yeah. I've eaten ants before.
What's it like?
It's sour. They're very acidic.
Sour, bitter, gross.
Yeah, they don't taste like much.
Yeah,
like, they're crunchy.
Bulldog ants would taste bad.
Oh, yeah. I'm not eating that kind of ant.
Yeah.
Formic acid going down the hatch would be rough.
So when I was younger, I was in Scouts, and we had a survival camp, and that's where I've eaten ants before. They actually ate an earthworm too, which was vile.
That would be a tough one.
And the ants actually tasted pretty good by comparison. So ants would be my choice.
If you were out there at that point, I almost think an earthworm would be like a good meal.
A couple grams,
so slimy, dude.
A couple grams of protein.
Yeah, like it's like, and they'd be at least moist.
There's no chewing.
No.
You swallow. You have to swallow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, you're not crunching on them. Earthworm, the texture is just disgusting.
That'd be so bad. It'd probably like resist a little bit.
And they slime.
Start
they
fighting
slime.
back.
If you ever put a worm on a fishing hook, you get that slime all over. Yeah, so you want to avoid that. You're like that defense response. You want to get right past that.
Yeah, you're gonna just
throw them down there and let the acid take care of it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, yeah, I think ants would be my choice. Flies would be rough, but it would be an easy meal. I guarantee it. Just leave your mouth open. You're gonna get a mouthful of flies.
I feel like flies are a little juicier on the inside.
Yeah.
That'd be
I think they
really,
wouldn't be too
really
bad.
rough.
And flying around though in your mouth would. I mean, none of it's fun. I got a couple.
Let's get a satellite image.
Yeah, let's get a scale of what we're looking at for the Alice Springs area.
All right, here we go. So, Northern Territory, right here. Alice Springs is going to be this general area. Yep.
Just a little lower. Right there.
Oh, yep, Alice Springs. Let's see how urban it is. Is there any?
It's urban.
Oh, okay.
So Alice Springs, and this isn't to speak poorly about the people from Alice Springs, because there's some very nice Australians I met there, and there's some really nice places to be there. They have an issue with crime in Alice Springs because, again, there's just
isolation,
a lack of policing, or just lack of bodies to do the policing. So I know that there's they deal with a lot of drugs and other type of those related crimes happening in Alice Springs. So there is a lot of urban sprawl here.
It's
just
still pretty
few
small.
subdivisions.
Yeah, it's not big though.
When you're there, it feels like a legit city. I will say that. It doesn't feel like a town.
They do
It
have a
feels like
hospital.
city. Yeah. But yeah, there is it's just like any city. You're going to have some stuff that goes down. So you got to be careful. If you go to Alice Springs, they definitely warn you, don't go to certain places, don't stay out late after night on your own, all that stuff. But
then nothing.
So you get outside of Alice Springs and you go west towards, we went to Ulara and Uluru. Uluru is Aries Rock, which is it is probably the number one tourist site of the Outback, seeing Aries Rock or Uluru.
Man, this is advanced nothing though. You look at the states, there's always some sort of farm or agriculture, or the land is somehow marked as owned. This is just nothing.
Yeah. I'm trying to even find it. So when you go visit Uluru, you fly into Alice Springs. That's the port of entry. Dude, Google Earth is rough.
We're already lost.
I'm having a hard time with Google Earth.
Why don't you just search it?
There we go. Okay. So Ulara this is a small town. So you fly into Alice Springs and then you go to Ulara to stay if you want to visit Uluru or Aries Rock, depending on which name you like. This is a really cool town though. I will say Ulara is awesome. They have some really cool resorts. I enjoyed my time in Ulara. But here's the famous rock right here, and then those of you who recognize this image.
Yeah, you see that? It's like a desktop.
The world's largest rock, and it's very cool. We got to climb around here and stuff, and you used to be able to climb to the top, but I think that they stopped allowing people to climb it out of respect to the native tribes there, because there's a lot of native
cultural significance.
Yeah, but there's also some preserved areas where they have hieroglyphs and things. So they want people to observe it, but not walk and trash it. So it is still worth seeing, but you could see beyond this. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing out here. You are in the Outback for real. So
no gas stations.
Who knows? And then you have these long, they call them, that's a territory marker, but road trains. So they'll have these semis that will, like our trailers, you might see 2 back to back. You'll see trailers stacked up like 5 or 6 deep.
Oh, wow.
On these with one tractor.
Wow.
So you have these, like, they call them road trains going across Australia for days. And that's typically most of the people going across the Outback are these people. They're trucking from one side of the continent to the other. But once you get off those main tracks, and those roads are straight as an arrow.
Are they paved? Or are they?
Yeah, they're paved. They're bitumen roads, and they go from, like, I believe this is a road. I think these are roads, these territory markers. They go from north to south. I could be wrong about that, but the roads are straight as it can get. And you can just drive for days and days and days. And then the pit stops are these, like, little roadhouses where they have, motel, restaurant, gas, resupply. You spend the night and then you move on. And that's all there is. So if you're just left out here in the wilderness and you don't know which direction to go, if you start walking and you walk the wrong way, you're toast. Wow. It's game over. Yeah. But yeah, what do you guys think about his story about getting drugged and buried alive? What do you think about that?
I don't know how much I believe the buried alive part. I could see like something going awry if you picked up a hitchhiker out there and somehow you ended up like kicked out of your car. And
I mean, I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast heard that move and was like, "Yep, that's where you messed up, Ricky."
Yeah, yeah. However it played out, I don't know if they were like partying together, and
I'm sure there was a little partying going on.
That would be my thought.
And this is
probably not much else to do out there with other people.
I could say this confidently that no Australian will take offense to me saying that they like a beer. Australians love a beer, and when you're an Australian, there's a lot of beer drinking going on. So I'm sure there was definitely at least some of that happening at the very minimal, and then probably some other things too, by the sounds of it. All right, so now that we've covered the story, let's go into some of the questions. And Asa was kind enough to put these together for us. The first one is, first actions. If you were Ricky's position with no supplies, what would your first priorities be to survive? Would it be shelter, water, movement? What are you going to do? What's going to happen, Asa?
I would start looking around first. I know that shelter is super important, especially in that type of environment when heat is just going to zap all your energy. But you don't know where you are. So maybe the road is only, 50 feet away. You got to move a little bit. And then if I don't find something pretty quick, I'm going to take shelter wherever I can get a little shade and wait until it's like almost sunset. All
right. There's an issue with this. I'm going to cover it because before I get into it, I want to hear Andrew's answer. Andrew, what are you going to do?
I would probably look for shade or shelter first because the way I look at it is if you are just in direct sunlight, you're getting zapped of hydration faster. You're basically burning through more of your life resources faster. So the first thing I would want to do is reduce the rate of consumption before acquiring water or moving, which would require like strategic thinking. I'd want to minimize my losses of the ability to think.
You're going to die that day if you don't have shelter.
Yeah,
you're going to die that day. It's like you're not making it to sunset.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if imagine just being in the shade and then being in the direct sunlight there. It's like your loss of water is like exponentially.
It's not even dehydration. It's just the pure heat. You're going to get heat stroke that day. So you must find shelter immediately. And not that you're wrong, Asa, in that searching. It's just how you search. So and like knowing where the road is. So I'm more with Andrew. I'm like first things first.
Crawl into the termite mound.
Yeah, I know. I know it's going to be over 100 degrees this day, and I won't survive the day if I don't find shade. So my first mode of action is to find shade like a base camp. Either if I have to make it or I see it in the distance, I'm getting that first. That's your first priority.
Sure. Yeah.
Now after that, that's when I go to your mode of like situational awareness. Where am I? And proximally, what matters most is what's closest to you, right?
Yeah.
You're in Australia, but that doesn't mean anything. You need to know where's the next road, where's the next water source, all those things. And I would want to be very strategic about how I discover the proximal, advantages around me. And, like when you scuba dive, we're taught when you're lost, you're supposed to do a spiral search methodology. Because if you just start walking in one direction,
it's a big commitment.
It's a big commitment.
Yeah.
And you could get lost. You may not ever find your shelter again. So wherever you deem your safe
Your point
hub
A.
to be. Yeah, your point
Sure.
A. You need to make sure you can always get back to that quickly or within a period of time where you won't die from exposure.
Yeah. I definitely not suggesting you just start walking in one direction and commit to that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like a radius of this is my point.
Correct. And then you just do it, and it's day after day. So your basic survival needs are shelter, water, food. And if you can cover those three bases, now we can start our discovery of where we are and try to create benchmarks on how far you might have to go. Because I will say this, I don't know if I'm with Ricky in the sense of I'm just going to stay put and wait for someone to save me. I'm not that kind of person. I'm going to figure out a way to travel, to go, to get somewhere. And you're going to use all the things you can to your advantage. At night, you're going to use the stars. During the day, you're going to use the direction of the sun so you can get your directional bearings. And then you're going to start creating a map or at least some primitive form of where you are and start checkpointing what's where and how far it takes you to get there.
Definitely would be if you can find a point of elevation and off out, like maybe travel up there at night when it's cool.
Yeah.
And wait until sunrise to kind of get bearings on where you might be.
And I can tell you there is no point of elevation out there. You're only going to have trees. Your trees are good, and the trees all look the same. All the mounds look the same. It cannot explain to you how disorienting it is to even go on a road where you do have a road for your point of direction, but everything is just the same everywhere. So we kind of covered some of the first actions, which
we already went over
the
water strategies.
Yeah, food in extreme conditions we talked about, eating insects. Yeah, you're not gonna probably find any big game out there unless there's cattle. What would you do? What would you do if you found a cow? That's a good question.
I was thinking that, like, so if these ranchers came out and found him, there must have been cattle within some vicinity. Maybe he never saw them, and I'm sure he probably did.
We saw a lot of dead cattle when we were out there.
Really?
Because the cattle don't survive these conditions. Like they die from exposure.
I think that's a very risky play to mess with the rancher's cattle.
Oh, really?
You think the rancher's going to be mad at you?
Oh, yeah, I think
at that point, I wouldn't be concerned.
No.
Be like, pal.
They're not going to come off you because you had to snack on a cattle.
Dude, one of the laws in Massachusetts is that you touch someone's lobster trap, they can shoot you.
Really?
That's a law on the books in Massachusetts. They're gonna wipe you out if they poach a single cat.
I think if they see a guy that looks like Ricky, like starved like that, and he's going ballistic over a cat, well, maybe you would.
I don't think he's going ballistic if he has to. If he's, it depends. I
don't know how I would go about even trying.
They might be afraid of you because you're gonna look like Leo from The Revenant, covered.
You're going inside.
Yeah, like what? Yeah, no. Before we get to
they're not going to be afraid of you.
I don't know. Would you if you're starving and you see a cattle, are you going to use that cattle as a food resource, or are you going to be like, no, I'm good with bugs? Let's assume you can make a fire too. Let's assume you know how to put a fire.
Does it? I guess it probably doesn't have milk.
Dog.
Pure Asa goes right for the cereal. Like, do we have some Rice Krispies to go with that milk?
I wouldn't risk vomiting in that situation. I'd be trying to conserve all my fluids internally.
I would maybe try and
I might try and drink some of the.
Would you go Bear Grylls and go for the blood? I was gonna say.
Yeah. That's the one thing that would maybe. But like eating like carrion at that point, basically, that thing's gonna decompose so fast in that heat.
Yeah, you'd have like 2 days.
You can make jerky out there really easily, which is very safe to eat. Mm-hmm. I'm just throwing it down.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not answering the question. I'm just throwing it down.
It's not a bad idea. You'd have nothing to like butcher it with, which would be tough. Like, I guess a sharp rock, maybe.
Do you think, well, put it this way, do you think you're even capable of dispatching a cow with your bare hands?
I was going to say, I think that would be tough.
Yeah.
And probably start running, if you really came up on it with, a rock or something.
Have you guys seen the movie Heavyweights?
Yeah.
Where they go after the cow with baseball bats. That's all I'm picturing in my head right now.
I actually don't remember that.
Yeah, when they're, being starved at fat camp, and then he's riding home to his grandma. He's like, we even tried to catch a cow, and they all are like, "We want meat." They're like going after the cow with a baseball bat.
So ridiculous.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Enough of that discussion. Shelter. How important is it to stay shaded in that environment? We covered that's very important. How are you going to build a shelter? What are you looking for to make a shelter? Besides, like, crawling in a termite mound, which would be pretty tough. They're not that big. They're only about this big around.
I mean, loose branches.
Mm-hmm.
Probably start covering it with other like tumbleweeds and any type of like thatch type.
Thatch. I haven't heard that word in a while. Lashings.
Yeah. Just, I mean, like some type of like lean-to type shelter, like something I could.
Because so the most basic shelter out there with the termite mound is going to be the shade of the termite mound. However, as we know, as the sun moves, that shade's going to change.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to move with the shade, and you will be rested. But I also think the amount of shade and the ground heat around you is going to matter.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to create a lot of shade.
I would definitely dig, if I had the energy, like a partial,
a hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely want to create a point.
You're gonna have a solid amount of shade always there, and it's gonna stay cooler.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You're gonna stay below, like the heat's gonna sit up, and if you can get lower, it's gonna rise above you.
I feel like the key would be creating like a nice area of shade that is in the shade no matter the time of day. I feel like that's kind of like your.
That's where the tarp comes in. Because you found a tarp.
Yeah.
That's clutch. If you can find some kind of cover.
Yeah, I mean that
create a shelter.
Option number one right there.
Yeah, and then it sounds like there was some basic wood and other things to create a shelter. But in the absence of those human elements, finding sticks, doing a lean-to, I think digging a hole is a great idea. Finding any kind of structure that automatically creates shade is a good place to start, because then you can just expand on that with other things. But the amount of shade definitely matters, because you can imagine, like, let's say on this table, like my laptop is completely covered in shade, but that's the only space you have. All this heat surrounding it is going to affect the ground temperature that you're sitting on. So it's not just about the heat from above; it's the heat from the ground. This arid desert environment becomes like an oven, because all that clay and sand is just baking all day long. And have you ever been out west in the desert, like at the end of the day when the sun starts to set, but it just feels like it's getting hotter and hotter? That's that radiant heat effect. So you need a good amount of shade at the end of the day. So that's important. Mental toughness. Let's talk about the psychological standpoint. And this is probably where the becoming brave factor of it all is hitting this story. Withstanding these conditions, if we were to believe his timeline of 71 days, what kind of mental toughness does it take to endure this environment and this situation for that long?
An incredible amount, but I also got to think like it's some sort of primal.
I was going to say, if
it's a
you have
combination
survival instinct, I think it almost kicks in. Like you do go to like that primal mode.
Like no one's willingly going to eat a mouthful of flies. Like it definitely takes some sort of like primal.
That said, do
drive.
I think most people could do it? I don't. I think it takes
an exceptional,
type of person that does have that kind of drive within them.
I feel like if Ricky wasn't Australian, this would not have worked out.
Yeah, if you just took like a random person off the street and put them in the situation, they're probably
no
gonna
way.
fold.
If we plucked someone from downtown Boston and threw him into this would not have gone well.
Yeah.
This would not have ended in a happy ending.
I mean, it sounds like he's Australian. He's familiar with like just how serious the situation being stuck in the Outback is. I think that probably helps quite a bit to like not panic, because at least you have like some sort of like, this is serious. The ability to grasp how serious it is probably helps with the panic to a certain degree.
Totally.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. And at what point do you stop trusting yourself? That's where it becomes tough for me. So I believe, given our experience and dealing with, working in the field, we'd probably make it a couple weeks, just by that fact alone.
Mm-hmm.
But then you sort of get into the long haul of it and the uncertainty of, is this ever going to end? And you're essentially just going on pure faith at that point that you will be rescued, because you get that emaciated, you lose 130 pounds, and you're becoming weaker and weaker and your mental fortitude is just diminishing every day, you're not going to be able to get out of there at some point.
Yeah.
I remember one time we were in the Arabian Desert and we went off the trail about like 20 yards and got turned around at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get
And
lost easy.
we were great. We had water and stuff like that.
We had a nice meal.
Yeah. We were well fueled, well provisioned, and we immediately got lost.
So to me, that's the mental so when you're making that initial decision of stay put and wait to be rescued or try to move, that there's a window for that.
Mm-hmm.
And when that window closes, there is no going back on that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do? Are you guys in the camp of staying put? Or are you in the camp of finding your own salvation?
I think if you found an outpost, I think what he did was the right play. Like finding an outpost that says like, oh, people were here.
Yeah.
Someone will eventually come back. I think that is your best chance.
Yeah, like an environmental factor like that shifts your mindset in such like a heavy way to me of thinking like this is close enough to civilization. It's tough to say because from the looks of him, it's like if you had sent him walking even for a day, he was done for, and he probably kind of had that feeling.
Yeah, I mean,
so it was like
you hope that he was at least going on mini expeditions to say like, hey, what's down there? Like, what if I go, 500 yards that way?
Mm-hmm.
What if I go tomorrow 500 yards this way?
Mm-hmm.
Can you learn anything? Because that the proximal visibility that you gain by even going 500 yards could make the difference of understanding geographically where you are or not. So to me, getting that information means you're going on these like daily hikes there and back. But at some point, the chance to do that is gone.
Yeah.
And can you take the structure with you? That's another thing.
Yeah, that's big.
Can you make a day campsite? So
having that be your main water source too. Like if you had a way of transporting any of the water, it would make a huge difference.
And you can also like, here's some other survival things that I'm thinking of. Like I would love to go the distance by night, bring my shade kit with me. I would not recommend just getting beaten up every day in the sun with no resources. That would be very bad. However, you ask, can you find your way back? That's where you have to use a little bit more strategy where like you need to leave a trail of breadcrumbs. That's very effective. So you can, collect rock, spend a day collecting rocks and then making a line of those rocks as you travel by night. That would be a very good strategy.
Yeah.
So you could find your way back.
Yeah.
But that means now you have a day of collection. There's every single
how many
move you make.
How many rocks
every
can you
single rock
hold?
with you,
How much confidence do you have that you can start to track it back?
Yeah. You can also use a drag indicators. You can break branches. We have to know a little bit more about the actual situation that he's in.
Yep.
You can mark trees by breaking a branch. You can take a stick and just drag a line in the sand.
That's what I was picturing. Yeah.
Behind you. There's just a lot of things that you can do to mark your trail, your footprints. But of course, a windstorm comes in, rain comes in, that's gone now. It's a tough situation to be in. I
don't know if there's an expert could say, this, and this, but there really is no one right way to survive when it comes to a situation like this.
And it's impossible to know how you would fare until you're in it. It's a lot easier to be confident sitting at this table in climate controlled room, where we know where we're going to lunch today.
Yeah.
Then you're literally stuck out there without a clue of where you are and where you got to go.
Yeah, like say the scenario is like, what if he was on this like 100 square mile? No, not 100 square mile. Like 100 by 100 plot of land, and it's like you could be perfectly provisioned, perfectly executed to hike, and you're just not going to cover 100 miles. Versus the rancher who will come around to every well at that property at some point. You know what I mean? I feel like that is probably because who knows if there will be there could be nothing. You know?
Yeah. So to conclude this segment, you would you stay put or would you go on expeditions?
I'd like to think I would probably go on expeditions. Knowing myself, I think I would.
Yeah. And you are alone. There's no team.
Like knowing myself, I think I would have to move.
Yeah.
I think I would also ultimately try to search for like just some sort of outpost, however vague. Because if you don't find that, you're honestly screwed either way. So it's like, well, you might as well try and find something. Mm-hmm. And once you find something, once I found something, I would stay there. So I basically do what he did, I suppose, which isn't a very dynamic answer, but
at first you tried. We don't know if he went on expeditions or not.
Yeah, we haven't. He did.
Well, it sounds like
he
found. Well, it sounds like he found this thing. Well, this
cattle post.
Post. So it sounds like
he was moving.
Yeah, it sounds like he must have been close by to it at least.
So for me, I would definitely be on team expedition my way out. I just know my personality. There's no way I could sit there dying without giving it my last shot. Now, all that being said, Ricky survived.
Yeah.
So his strategy worked out for him. Would it work out for us? I mean, you never really know until you're in there. But it's still a fantastic survival story, and I think a great kickoff to this new segment. And with that will conclude our discussion into the fantastical story of Ricky Megee surviving in the Australian outback for 71 days, eating nothing but bugs and drinking cattle trough water, and somehow making it out alive. Do you believe the story? Tell us in the comments section. That is one of the big questions. Is this story actually believable? So I'd like to hear from you, the audience, if you actually believe that Ricky's account of his incredible survival story is genuine and real. And if you have any other survival stories that you'd like to hear about or hear us discuss, please add those to the comments section as well. We're going to be doing more of these survival segments coming up in the future. Thank you, Asa, for bringing us this first one. Thank you, Andrew, for the lively discussion. And we will see you guys on the next Becoming Brave podcast. I'm Mark Vins. We'll see you next time.